Hello everyone and welcome back to another Simply Dark episode. Today's episode is going to be a very dark one. We are getting to the end of Simply Dark Season 2. We only have 2 more episodes to go, so today's episode and one more that is going up next week. And I'm very excited for the end of this season. I'm very excited for the little break I will take in the month of April. I'm obviously going to be off camera, but I'm still going to be working on Simply Dark. I will be doing loads of researching for new topics for the new season, working on a new intro as always, new music, and for these 2 last episodes of the season I really wanted to do something very interesting and something that you would really enjoy, just to take your minds off this whole coronavirus situation that is going on. So I've been reading a book called Holocausto Brasileiro. This is a Brazilian book by an author called Daniela Arbex, and it basically tells the horrific story of what she calls a Brazilian Holocaust. And I have never heard about this before, so I was so hooked into this book that I thought it would be a good idea to do a full episode on this topic. Obviously, this video will be a very summarized version of what it says in the book, so I would still recommend you guys to read this book yourselves because it is amazing. I will leave a link for the book in the description box below so you can get to it easily. So the Holocausto Brasileiro book was published in 2013 and it shows the barbarism and the terrifying stuff that happened in Brazil between the years of 1903 and 1980. The horror scene is the asylum in the mining town of Barbacena, and it is estimated that at least 60,000 people died in between those years. And more shocking than that was the fact that the bodies were sold and generated profit for the institution. And this forgotten tragedy was hidden from the vast majority of Brazilians. And because of this, journalist Daniela Arbex wondered about the reasons why her generation did not know about such terrible act that occurred in Brazilian lands. The asylum was nicknamed Cologne precisely because it had traces of behavior from the Nazi Germany that wiped out thousands of lives in the World War II. And the name of the book was actually inspired by the real conditions people were treated. Many arrived in mass in freight cars, very similar to the ones that would catch the trains to go to the concentration camps. Men in particular had their heads shaved, most were naked, and only afterwards would wear some kind of uniform. But not all, just some of them. Incredibly, the past seems to have been left in a drawer. So much so that the institution still exists today. Opened in 1903, it has always been the object of controversy over the treatment provided. But between the periods of 1930 and 1980, there was the height of greater human cruelty. In this time frame, people who had no mental problems whatsoever were hospitalized. Something estimated at around 70% of people had no psychiatric diagnosis and should not be there. In interviews with the press, psychiatrist Franco Basaglia commented that between those years, the asylum became a place where unwanted people of the society were locked up. The initial idea was to take care and treat people with mental illnesses, but the objective was distorted with gays, black people, prostitutes, and alcoholics imprisoned instead. Nevertheless, it was not uncommon for even more absurd cases to happen. In one report, a girl who became pregnant and because of this was an inconvenience to her family was left there with the promise of learning a lesson and that they would return to pick her up soon, but the thing is, they never came back. There was no fair or clinical system for issuing hospitalization orders. The powerful people of the time had an influence in that place. So rich people that had a problem with someone or that were dissatisfied with their wife or with their daughter for some reason, or even with someone on the street, if you were rich, you had the power, you could send anyone to that place. The inmates slept together on the floor without a bed in a large room, like if they were animals. The ground was covered with grass and they were forced to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day. After waking up, they were put in the central courtyard where they stayed until 7 p.m. every single day, Sunday to Sunday. Barbacena is known for being a cold city, and it is horrendous to think about what these people went through. Naked in the middle of a courtyard, waiting for the night to come. Food was considered an absurd. Like, who needs to eat? Many were severely malnutritioned and hundreds developed diseases, and most of the patients were obviously starving. Water was also not understood as a basic element for human life. Inmates often drank their own urine, or sometimes they even drank from the sewage, in addition to eating rats and pigeons desperate from some source of food. There are also reports that many women were raped by officials. The fact that many of the people were left naked gave the place an air of promiscuity, which obviously stimulated things like this to happen. And children were not spared, and they also slept naked together with everyone else in these horrible conditions. Even though this site did not have a good structure, the house was still able to house 5,000 patients at the same time. But the original capacity of the project said there would be only 200 people. So they went from 200 to 5,000 people, sometimes even more. It is estimated that 16 people died every day, and this was normal. This was just treated as normal. The author of the book told in press interviews that records of 1,800 bodies were found between 1969 and 1980, and these bodies would actually generate profit for the asylum. So every time someone died, that wasn't a problem, that was money to them. They would basically sell the bodies to medical schools. About 17 universities of Brazil bought these bodies. The Federal University of Minas Gerais received 67 pieces. and this is how they called the bodies. Now, as time went by, this kind of business stopped being profitable to the asylum, as universities didn't want to buy as many bodies as before. So what they would do is they would just burn the bodies. So if someone died, they would burn the body and that's it, no problem. Now, obviously, this couldn't be unnoticed forever, and people started realizing what was going on in that asylum. The Brazilian magazine O Cruzeiro was one of the first media outlets to do an article showing what was actually happening in there, and Daniela Arbex actually has their account in her book, so I would again recommend you to read that because it's super interesting. And even with the magazine letting people know what was going on, nothing was done. The asylum was still doing these monstrosities, and although obviously people that knew about it were against it, nothing was actually done. The author of the book also says that it was only in 1979, when psychiatric reforms were introduced in Minas Gerais, that the situation in that place began to change. And like I mentioned previously, this asylum is still open today, but it was turned into a hospital that maintains around 160 patients at the time, and obviously they are not doing these atrocities anymore. And I know what you're thinking, so what happened to the people that work there? Did any of them paid for what they did? And the answer is no. According to the author of the book, nobody was ever punished for this true genocide, which was mostly unknown from the general public and erased from general knowledge as if that had never happened. This insane piece of history of Brazil had never happened. And this is why I enjoyed this book so much, and this is how I thought this would be such an interesting topic for this video, because I know that a lot of you, like me, will not know about this. And again, I know I said this a million times in the video, but I would definitely recommend you guys to read this book if you are into this kind of dark history stories. I would definitely recommend you to check it out, because I'm pretty sure you will love it as much as I did. It is such a good reading. And I also know that because of the coronavirus, a lot of you are home in quarantine, and we need to keep our brains going. We need to give some nutrition to our brains, and there's nothing better than reading a book to do so. This is it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know this was a very dark topic, but I still hope that this episode took your mind off the coronavirus for at least a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to leave me all your comments below. I love to read them and reply to them. Don't forget to subscribe and join the family as well. We have a brand new SimplyDARK season starting in May, so I hope you are as excited as I am for a new SimplyDARK season. The last episode of season 2 will be next week, so keep your eye out for it, because it is an episode that was highly requested. This was one of my most requested topics to talk about here, so make sure you come back next week for that. Again, thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next episode.